up your hearts, young men, let nothing fright you. Be of a gallant mind, let that delight you. Let not your courage fail till after trial, nor let your fancy move at the first denial. One day a gallant youth did cross the ocean to free America from her invasion. He landed at Quebec with all his party, the city to attack, both brave and hearty. Brave Wolfe drew up his men in foremost pretty on the plains of Abraham before the city. There just before the town the French did meet them. With double numbers they resolved to beat them. Each man then took his post at their retire. So then these numerous hosts began to fire. The cannon on each side did roar like thunder, and youths in all their pride were torn asunder. The drums did loudly beat, colors were flying, the purple gore did stream, and the men lay dying. When shot from off his horse fell this brave hero, and we lament his loss in weeds of sorrow. Began to break, their ranks were flying. Brave Wolfe then seemed to wake as he lay dying. He lifted up his head while the guns did rattle, and to his army said, "How goes the battle?" His aide-de-camp replied, "'Tis in our favor. Quebec with all her pride, we soon shall have her. She'll fall into our hands with all her treasure." "Oh, then," replied brave Wolfe, "I die with pleasure."
I'm back, and this is sort of just going back through the archives to see how bad Bill Cassidy did. He got 25% of the vote, okay? I went back and I looked at every single non-appointed senator. This, in my mind, was the worst primary showing ever, at least since the end of World War II. That is how badly Bill Cassidy did. He did worse than every single one, getting 25% of the vote in a for a senator in a primary. It's literally unheard of, and that is because, of course, Donald Trump endorsed against this guy.
Look, if you could find a different case of this, Harry looked at every single one and thinks it's the worst. Send us,
Send it.
Yeah, tweet us.
Tweet us.
Is Twitter still a thing? I don't know.
You're Xing us, I guess.
In any case, so President Trump endorsed an opponent here. How does President Trump do in general when he endorses a Republican primary?
You know, we've quoted the movie Good Burger every single time, basically, when we've done this. When, in fact, you go against President Trump, you go in the grinder, and you could just see this. Times Trump endorsees have won in GOP primaries. It's about 95% each of the last 4 cycles. Now, I will note, sometimes he endorses and there's no real challenger. But even in those cases, the challengers to the incumbent have won a majority of the time as well. And one of the key reasons why that is right is you look at Trump's approval rating within the GOP, 21st century own party approval. At this point in term 2, he's still at 83%. That's more popular than Obama was with Democrats, way more popular than George W. Bush was with Republicans back in 2006.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. Sometime around 2 a.m. on July the 3rd of 2025, a Kentucky farmer in a suit walked out of the United States Capitol alone. Every other Republican who had voted no that night had already flipped. One of them cried on the phone with Trump for 25 minutes and then changed her vote. Another one drove 2 hours home, got a change of clothes, and drove back. The speaker prayed with the holdouts on the House floor and snapped a photo. By 3:20 in the morning, the bill had passed 218 to 214. $3.4 trillion added to the deficit, $5 trillion on the debt ceiling, and the only Republican who still had a no on the board walked to his car and told ABC News, "It wasn't beautiful enough for me to vote for it." 17 hours later, Trump called him a pathetic loser on Truth Social. By morning, the most expensive House Republican primary in American history was already in motion. $35 million to take out one farmer, one debt clock, and a movement that's been arguing about itself ever since. Massey has been in Congress for 12 years. He's been right about COVID, right about the debt, right about surveillance, right about foreign wars. He also called the Trump White House the Epstein administration on national television. Whoops. He took a photo with a guy in an American right hoodie. He has a coalition that includes some of the most principled liberty voters in the country and some of the most radioactive people on the internet. And 6 days before the primary, a Florida woman named Cynthia West went on camera and said that he offered her $5,000 in cash to make her ethics complaint go away. So this is money he allegedly calls cow money, which is a terrible name for a really bad stripper. Massie denies it. His own defender said the bribery probably didn't happen because $5,000 is too low for a millionaire, which is quite a funny thing to say. That's not really a defense, of course. That's accidentally honest. Tiffany Cianci spent Sunday afternoon with Massie eating pizza and jamming on bluegrass in Kentucky. She says America is not all for sale, and this race is her chance to prove it to her kids. Tom Pappert says Massie is the Roy Moore of Rand Paul's, and the Epstein strategy turned child sex abuse victims into engagement bait. Both of them will be on this show today for a great debate. Both of them will get hard questions. Kentucky votes today. The debt clock is still ticking. This is the Wake Up America show. I'm Austin Peterson. Today we'll make the case both pro and con for Massey. Make sure you click that like button. We do have bonus content available for you today. If we raise $100 in Rumble Rants or in purchases at forlibertyshop.com, then you'll unlock our mini documentary about one of the heroes of the American Revolution. So head on over to forlibertyshop.com this morning. Check out our 250th anniversary collection, all of our wonderful gear there, and let's get to it. So this vote started on the evening of July 2nd, 2025, and it went all night. 5 Republicans had voted no on the procedural rule, the last gate before Trump's one big, beautiful bill went to final passage. Speaker Johnson had told Fox News that he would keep the vote open for as long as it takes. The hallway outside the chambers, in the smoky-filled rooms, right? Members were waiting. There was a group of holdouts that had scattered into the building, and several of them were hiding in Representative Chip Roy's office. Representative Scott Perry of Pennsylvania had driven home 2 hours away to go get a change of clothes. Leadership waited for him to drive back rather than call the vote without him. Trump got on the phone at 1 a.m. Massie was on the call. Tim Burchett was on the call. Victoria Spartz was on the call. And Trump posted on Truth Social, "What are the Republicans waiting for? MAGA is not happy and it's costing you votes." And one by one through the night, they folded. Burchett flipped. Clyde flipped. Self flipped. Spartz took a 25-minute call with Trump, allegedly cried, and came out saying she was still a no. And then she flipped moments later. Johnson then gathered the remaining holdouts on the House floor, prayed with them, and snapped a photo. By 3:20 in the morning, every Republican who had voted no had changed their vote. Everyone but Thomas Massie. He walked to his car after the final vote and said, "It wasn't beautiful enough for me to vote for it," which, good line. Now, the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, they had scored that bill at $3.4 trillion added to the deficit over the next decade. The debt ceiling went up $5 trillion. And today, Kentucky will vote on whether to send Thomas Massie home. And I want to tell you why I think that there's a good reason they should not send him home. You know, I've been in liberty politics since before most people in this audience knew what that word meant. I ran for president in 2016 as a libertarian. I've been to the rallies. I've met all of these people. I've watched this movement build something real, and then I've watched it get picked apart piece by piece. And Thomas Massie is one of the last pieces still standing. He's an MIT-trained engineer with 24 patents who built a $32 million haptic technology company, sold it, then went home to Lewis County, Kentucky. He built an off-grid house by hand using wood and stone from his own farm, and then powered the entire thing with solar panels and a salvaged Tesla battery he retrofitted himself. The guy's a certified genius. Then he ran for local office, and he beat the incumbent Democrat by 40 points. And the guy who is calling him an attention seeker is describing a man who had a $32 million tech company and chose to live in Garrison, Kentucky. He's the only guy in Congress trading peaches instead of stock tips. Thomas Massie's priorities are raw milk and farm work over Pfizer and Raytheon. The guy wears a ticking debt clock on his lapel every day, and he votes like he means it. And when every other Republican in the building folded in the early hours of July 3rd because Trump made them afraid, Massie walked to his car and spoke his truth. Now, during the Tea Party years, Massie's late wife, Rhonda, told him to turn on the radio and listen to a guy who, quote, sounds like you. It was Rand Paul. Massie turned off the radio and drove 2 hours to a town hall and then organized a fundraiser for Senator Rand Paul's Senate campaign. When Ron Paul endorsed Massie for Congress in 2012, Massie received more votes in that primary than his two establishment opponents combined. In Thomas Massie's victory speech then, he thanked the Tea Party, the Liberty Movement, and grassroots Ronald Reagan Republicans. Right? And that's not a political calculation. Massie is telling us there that night who he is. And I supported Thomas Massie because of what he stood for from day one. I mean, fiscal responsibility. He wears a literal ticking debt clock on his chest every day. And he walks into that building and his Second Amendment protection never wavers. Right? His opposition to warrantless surveillance and government spying on American citizens, his skepticism of foreign entanglements and endless wars, the Prime Act, his legislation to protect small American farms from federal overreach by allowing meat processing without going through USDA-inspected facilities. Hello, based alarm. This is what I want to see from my representatives. Right? The man authored a bill to abolish the Department of Education. Please clap. I shouldn't even have to ask. He authored a bill to abolish the EPA. Thomas Massie voted against the Patriot Act reauthorization. He voted against the NDAA year after year. He's been one of the most consistent votes against government expansion in the House for 12 straight years. In March of 2020, at the height of the COVID panic, when the entire country was being told to lock down and comply, Congress was trying to pass an $800 billion stimulus package by unanimous consent with almost no members present. Some of you might remember Massie flew back to Washington and forced an in-person vote. Trump called for him to be expelled from the Republican Party. Nancy Pelosi called him a dangerous person. The entire political class of both parties turned on him simultaneously, and he stood there anyway. Rand Paul said it pretty plainly when he stumped for Massie earlier this year. If they defeat him, they're defeating all of us. If 3 billionaires from New York can come down here and beat him, they defeat the movement. Right? And that is what the race is about. A man who came out of the Ron Paul Liberty movement, who built himself into one of the most principled votes in Congress, who votes with his party 77.6% of the time, according to CQ roll call. Of course, that would mean that he's voting with the Epstein administration 77% of the time. Why are you voting with the Jewish pedophiles 77% of the time? We'll get to that in the cons later. Thomas Massie's never once cast a vote he does not believe in. He's also never enacted a piece of garbage legislation into law the way so many other so-called successful congressmen have. See, in Washington, that's not the standard. In Washington, the standard is how many bills you actually pass. How many hands do you shake? How many palms do you grease? How quickly do you learn to fold when the phone rings at 1 a.m.? The pressure's on. Right? Massie's been in that building for 12 years, and he's never learned to fold. And that is a large part of exactly why they want him gone. On Saturday night in Louisiana, Bill Cassidy finished third in his own party's primary, United States Senator since 2014. He voted to convict Trump in 2021 and then spent the next 5 years trying to earn his way back. Right? The voters were not interested. Trump posted, "It was nice to see." And Kentucky votes today, and every Republican, of course, is watching this race today. If Cassidy is done for his impeachment vote and Massie is done for opposing a bill, the CBO scored at $3.4 trillion in new debt, then no Republican in that building has any reason to vote their conscience on anything again. The debt clock that Massie wears on his lapel will still be ticking. He just won't be wearing it. He'll just be hanging out at a farm in Garrison. Senator Rand Paul, he said something at a rally earlier this year that I haven't been able to get out of my head since all this controversy started. He said, it's the end of the Tea Party if Massie loses his primary. And I believe that. That is true. The Tea Party built a triumvirate back in 2008, 2010, 2012. Senator Rand Paul, Thomas Massie, Justin Amash, right? Those are the heydays of the Liberty Movement. 3 guys who came together. They voted together, and they gave the Liberty Movement real leverage in Congress for the first time since Ron Paul was doing it alone in the wilderness. Justin Amash, now, he's gone. The coalition that built that movement got disassembled piece by piece until only one person was left standing in the House, alone at 3 a.m., while every other Republican either bent the knee on the phone or drove home to get a change of clothes. Thomas Massie's opponent, Ed Gallrein, left the Republican Party, registered as an independent for several years, came back, ran for state senate in Kentucky in 2024, and lost the primary. Almost no name recognition in his own state. If Thomas Massie beats Ed Gallrein tonight, then it's going to be very clear why. Nobody knows who Ed Gallrein is. Nobody knows what he really stands for. He came out of nowhere. He hasn't campaigned. He hasn't done any debates. He hasn't really spoken to anybody about who he is or what he believes in. He's just been waiting for other people to make the case for him. Right? He's just, Trump even introduced him at the Boone County rally this last March with these warm words. Just give me somebody with a warm body to beat Massie. And I got somebody with a warm body, but a big, beautiful brain, right? A warm body, right? For the seat that's held by an MIT engineer who built his own house by hand, powered it with a salvaged Tesla battery, wore a debt clock to work every day for 12 years, and then stood alone on the House floor at 3 a.m. when everybody else folded. Now, Gallrein's big, beautiful brain has never won a single race in Kentucky. Massie has beaten 3 primary challengers, and none of them broke 25%. The Liberty Movement is not going to be able to build anything on martyrdom. We need live heroes. I've been saying this. Massie said it himself when Trump threatened him. Someone thinks they can control my voting card by threatening my reelection. Guess what? Doesn't work on me. So there are 435 members of the House. If you could find 5 more who would say that out loud, you would have. Where in this hall is there one honest man? We'll get to Diogenes later. The man who drove 2 hours to a Rand Paul and town hall in 2010 because his wife turned on the radio and said, "That guy sounds like you." That man has never stopped being that man. Thomas Massie is who he was, right? And that's who Kentucky votes on today. So the polls will close this afternoon, 5 p.m. Central Time. Somebody can fact check me on that one if they want to. I don't want to spread election misinformation. We'll have results tomorrow morning, and we'll cover the analysis. We'll cover everything that happened tomorrow morning as well, of course. Some of you might remember back in March of 2020, the entire country was in full panic. The states were locking down. Schools were closed, right? The media is comparing this respiratory virus like it's to September 11th, right? Congress is about to pass a $2 trillion stimulus package by unanimous consent with almost no members present, right? And this is the process where like the loudest side in an empty room wins, but nobody has to go on record with their vote, unanimous consent. Thomas Massie found out about it and drove overnight from his farm in Garrison, Kentucky to Washington, D.C. He then walked out on the House floor and said, "I came here to make sure our republic doesn't die by unanimous consent in an empty chamber." Bravo. Good on you, Congressman Massie. Good on you, right? And what happens next tells you everything you need to know about official Washington. Trump then called him a third-rate grandstander, posted Republicans should throw Massie out of the Republican Party, et cetera, et cetera. Even Nancy Pelosi, the Democrats, who allegedly saying nice things about him now because he's anti-Trump, those people walked up to him minutes before the vote, and they tried to talk him out of it. Right. John Kerry tweeted that Massie had, quote, tested positive for being an asshole, which is admittedly pretty funny. Thanks, John Kerry. I want you to ride your swift boat on out of time. All right, both party leaders, all teaming up against Massie. Former Secretary of State, right, all at the same time, all against one guy from Lewis County, Kentucky, who drove through the night because he thought Congress should actually show up to vote on $2 trillion of spending. Thank you, Congressman. He forced every member of Congress to physically return to Washington and be present. If they were going to spend that kind of money, they should have to be there. Now, on that day, the Congress critters actually spread out across the floor and into the public gallery. It was a spectacle. And this was to maintain social distancing. Does anybody remember social distancing? Reporters had said they had never seen anything like it. Now, Massie was ultimately outvoted, but he forced every single one of them to go on the record. His words on the floor: "If they're telling people how to drive a truck, bag groceries, and grow food, by golly, they could be in there and they could vote." Thank you, Congressman. Common sense. But now in 2026, the people who were attacking him that day over demanding that Congress actually show up to do their jobs, to spend trillions of dollars for a pandemic, now most of those people, maybe all of those people, say we would have done everything differently. Gavin Newsom said that. Emily Oster from Brown University, she was a big advocate for school closures, lockdowns, universal masking, vaccine mandates. She wrote in The Atlantic in 2022 that the precautions may have been, quote, totally misguided. These are the lockdowns that destroyed small businesses, some of them right here in Jefferson City. They kept children out of school for years, stunted their development, drove a mental health crisis. We're still paying for. Have you seen the Zoomers and the way that they stare at you? Have you seen the Zoomer stare? You're talking to them and they're just looking at you. Now, Calville over in the chat says, "Good talk today. If today doesn't go so good, it's either Dem or Rhino." Now, Calville, I know you're happy with what I'm saying right now. We're making the pro case for Thomas Massie. The con case is coming next. So if you like what I'm saying now, you're going to hate everything that's coming. Okay. And we are going to have a debate. And I am going to be impartial to the best of my ability when Tom Pappert and Tiffany Cianci join us live this morning at 8 a.m. Central Time. We're going to have a Massie versus MAGA debate at 8 a.m. Central on the Wake Up America show. If you are enjoying the show, click the like button before you take it back, and click the follow button as well if today is the first time that you're watching the Wake Up America show. Now, Massie knew that this healthcare crisis, quote unquote, was fake, that it was overblown. And he knew all that back in March of 2020 when it mattered. And he kept going after COVID was over too, right? He argued against mask mandates and vaccine mandates throughout 2021. Thomas Massie sued Nancy Pelosi after she fined him for refusing to wear a mask on the House floor. He showed up unvaccinated, got COVID, had mild symptoms, recovered, and then tweeted about it without apology and told people seeking advice to talk to their doctor because every case is unique. Massie then led freedom rallies against mandates when that was still a dangerous thing to do publicly. And for that, we thank you. The entire COVID response apparatus has since admitted that it was wrong, and Thomas Massie was right in real time alone when it still cost something to be right. That's not talking points. That is a real track record. And that is the pro case for Thomas Massie. But wait, there's more. But before we get there, make sure that you click that like button and follow as well. The Wake Up America show is sponsored by viewers and listeners just like you. Head on over to forlibertyshop.com during the live show this morning. And when you do, head over to forlibertyshop.com. You'll see our 250th anniversary collection there on the front page. A beautiful collection of products that you can't find anywhere else because, well, Stephanie designed them herself. The 1776 bifold wallet has become a sleeper hit over here. I had no idea it would be so popular. People really love it. My favorite is the black and gold star outline. So if you want one of those, head over to forlibertyshop.com. Buy it during the show. Every purchase that you make during the live show helps to unlock our bonus content. So when we raise $100 either in purchases made at forlibertyshop.com or in Rumble rants that are dropped, then when they add up to $100, then you'll unlock our documentary about a hero from the American Revolution. So head on over to forlibertyshop.com. Check out our delicious Founding Flavors coffee. Look at all the 5-star reviews we've got of our delicious coffee over at forlibertyshop.com. People love Jeffersonian Java. It's the #1 best-selling product in the store, and I know you guys will love it. And if you don't, I'll buy it back from you. So head on over to forlibertyshop.com. Check out all of our amazing products and make a purchase and support us financially because, well, putting together debates on Massie versus MAGA, it ain't cheap. Maria says, sound like you're about to debate yourself. Yes, I kind of am. I kind of am debating myself, and it's because I can see both sides. And I've made the pro case for Thomas Massie. I've made the case why he should be reelected. And when we get back, we're going to make the case why he should not be elected. And then we're going to have at 8 a.m. a full-blown debate between the two sides. So both sides of my brain at war with one another. We'll be back after this break. This is the Wake Up America show, and you're watching the 4 Liberty Network. Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from For Liberty shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again.
In a city where businesses never sleep, the technology still crashes. When technology turns criminal, they send up the signal. He's not a myth, and he's definitely not your nephew who knows computers. He installs, he protects, he backs it up, he keeps your business online and out of trouble. Managed IT, security, cloud, support that actually answers the phone. Layer 8 tech. When your network breaks, he wakes. Call Drew before your tech needs a rescue signal.
New dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them. Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at forlibertyshop.com.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian, and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
The left in America tells us not to have kids to save the planet, but in Cuba, they stopped having kids because the state destroyed the earth.
Collectivism doesn't create justice. It creates shortages, corruption, and power for the few. I've not just seen it, I've lived it. My family escaped it. Now, the same failed ideas are being sold to a new generation. I'm here to expose the lie and defend liberty. From Cuba to Argentina to the United States, the freedom movement is rising. Cafecito Libre is the exile voice of economic truth. Cafecito Libre, premiering March 3rd as part of the For Liberty Network, only on Rumble.
He's still in with the Epstein class. This is the Epstein administration, and they're attacking me for trying to get these files released.
And again, I'm going to say President Trump has not been accused of anything criminal here. Thank you very much.
He's still in with the Epstein class. This is the Epstein administration, and they're attacking me for trying to get these files released.
And again,
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show, and that's on the For Liberty Network. We're glad and thankful to have you here. Earlier in the show today, I made the case for why the voters in Kentucky's 4th Congressional District should keep Thomas Massie, and now I will speak in the negative. Thomas Massie was a hero during the Tea Party years, one of my heroes. I met him at events, donated to him, took pictures with him, covered his work on this show, supported him for years, defended him publicly, and I've lost friends this week for covering this race honestly. So what I'm going to say comes from somebody who wanted him to win and watched him make a serious strategic mistake that may now cost him everything. Thomas Massie stood on national television and told us that Donald Trump told us that even though he had dinner with these kinds of people in New York City and West Palm Beach, that he would be transparent, but he's not. He's still in with the Epstein class. This is the Epstein administration. The Epstein administration, yeah. And before that, Thomas Massie told Republican colleagues on camera that a vote against the Epstein bill was a vote to cover up for pedophiles. He said it publicly and repeatedly. And then came the moment that should have ended the crusade. Massie and his partner, Ro Khanna, the progressive Democrat from California, who became his unlikely ally in all of this, rushed before the cameras and declared that 4 men in New York City were, quote, likely incriminated in pedophile sex trafficking crimes. Khanna ran to the House floor and read these names out loud like he was unveiling some kind of government secret, denouncing them as powerful men that the DOJ was conspiring to protect. These were not powerful men. One was an auto mechanic. One was an IT technician, like our own Drew Van Runkle. 4 private citizens with zero public profile who had absolutely nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. They were confirmed innocent, and to this day, to my knowledge, neither Massie nor Khanna has ever apologized to those men, not one word. When you accuse a mechanic of being a pedo on national television and you're wrong, I would think that the minimum standard of human decency is an apology. Now, Massie, of course, has built his entire brand on the transparency standard. He applied it to Trump. He applied it to the DOJ. He applied it to every Republican who disagreed with him. but he never applied it to himself. And here's the part where every principled liberty voter who's capable of seeing both sides of an argument should stop and think. Massie admitted on a podcast in February of this year that before July of 2025, he, quote, wasn't paying a lot of attention to the Epstein case. The DOJ memo dropped on July 6th, 2 days after the big, beautiful bill vote. Interesting timing there. That is after Trump had already been threatening to primary him since March, after the political targeting was already underway, and suddenly, Thomas Massie, who by his own admission had not been paying much attention, became somehow the foremost Epstein accountability crusader in the United States Congress. Is that sus to anyone else? Now, what that did in practical terms was transform a legitimate transparency argument into a personal accusation against the sitting president and against every Republican who disagreed with him. The Epstein files fight was winnable. The transparency argument was solid. He had colleagues, he had momentum. And then he goes on ABC and says this.
He's still in with the Epstein class. This is the Epstein administration, and they're attacking me for trying to get these files released.
And again, I'm going to say President Trump has not.
Yeah, and then his coalition walked out the door. Like Justin Amash, before him, Massie got hornswoggled into a corner where the only move left for him was escalation. And escalation in that direction does not build a coalition, it ends one. And I've been saying for a year that I hope that Massie doesn't get Amashed, but if he does, then you have to look squarely at the choices that led us here. If he loses today, what was the point of this fight? What did the Liberty Movement get for this pointless squabble? Remember Justin Amash. Remember how that ended for us. Now, look who's in Thomas Massie's corner right now. Right? Not the principled Liberty voters. Those people I know. I respect them. I am one of them. I'm talking about the other ones. The Groypers, the leftists, the Islamists, Code Pink, the Hitlerites, right? The people whose primary argument about the world is that everything is Jews. And if Thomas Massie's coalition includes that people, that coalition, that's going to be a field day for the Democrats. Yesterday, Ryan Matta was trending because he turned this whole abstract coalition problem into one single photograph. Now, Matta, he kind of presents himself as an independent journalist and anti-child trafficking activist. Massie took a photo with him wearing the American Reich gear. And then, of course, critics started circulating old posts and clips of Ryan doing his Holocaust denial and Nazi sympathetic shtick, right? You don't have to accept every internet accusation as a courtroom fact, but it doesn't matter in this context because this is a primary knife fight. If a guy with an American Reich gear gets anywhere near your candidate, what the fuck are you doing? Right? The story stops being about debt, raw milk, the Prime Act, the Fourth Amendment, or the old Tea Party coalition. Remember the things that matter, right? The things that we're supporting this for, not an American Reich. Now it's not about debt or raw milk. It's not about limited government. It's about the American Reich. It becomes about Ryan Matta's hoodie and the screenshots, and that's what everybody's talking about. It becomes every enemy of Massie saying, see, this is who they are. Is that who you are? And that's why you draw lines early. That's the people who came for me this week for covering this race, honestly, the people who have tried to destroy my reputation for simply asking questions about a politician that they support, those people aren't liberty advocates. Frankly, I find most of these people disgusting. They're not the kind of people that you want as allies. You cannot build a successful coalition with the everything is the Jews people because these paranoid schizophrenics will turn on you in an instant the moment that you don't agree that flat Earth is causing 5G. When one gets into bed with conspiratards, one must expect the diseases that they spread. And this is rapidly what is getting to be what is left of the old Ron Paul coalitions. It's destroying what took years to build. Time to wise up, libertarians. Don't follow in Marjorie Taylor Greene or Justin Amash's footsteps. The people acting like criticism of Massie is treason are demonstrating exactly the kind of tribalism that they claim to oppose in the MAGA movement. You can't demand independent thinking from everyone and then send mobs after anybody who thinks independently about your guy. We don't need any more martyrs for liberty. It's time for libertarians to stop sending each other out to fall on their swords for politicians who don't know their asshole from their elbow when it comes time to win a primary. Now, I'm sick of the funerals for the Tea Partiers. No more dead martyrs. We need live heroes, even if they aren't pure libertarians. Now, something I posted earlier this year has been kind of sitting with me throughout this whole race. When Trump is wrong, you feel it. When Massie is wrong, the only people who suffer for it are his supporters. Trump's actions have consequences greater than Massie's. When Trump is right, he's winning huge victories. When Massie is right, we tweet about it and nothing changes. Massie's been in Congress for 12 years. He's been right about the debt, right about COVID, right about surveillance, right about foreign wars, right about the stimulus and the Patriot Act and the National Defense Authorization Act. And in those 12 years, when Thomas Massie was racking up I Was Right awards, the national debt went from $16 trillion to $36 trillion. The surveillance state expanded. The wars continued. The Federal Register got bigger. The argument for keeping Massie requires you to believe that his presence in the building is making it better. So tell me, concretely, specifically, how? How is his presence in the building making it better? Because the people defending him on fiscal responsibility grounds while the debt doubled on his watch, they're not grappling with that question honestly. They're huffing copium. And then ask who actually won from the Epstein crusade. Was it Massie or was it his Democrat friends? All right, Massie was not just collaborating with victim lawyer Bradley Edwards on messaging. He was collaborating with Edwards on the actual legislative text of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. And when that bill created a national uproar, Edwards and his colleagues leveraged the public pressure to secure roughly $108 million in new class action settlements at a 30% cut to the lawyers. What did the Liberty Movement get out of that? Nothing. Squat. The victim lawyer syndicate got $32 million. That's who won the Epstein crusade. Well, them and the Democrats. And Massie himself, the brand new foremost Epstein accountability champion in the United States Congress, now believes apparently Jeffrey Epstein is still alive. Not because he studied the autopsy photos that are right there in the files he spent a year campaigning to release, but because he ran an X poll in February this year and a plurality of his followers voted he's still alive. So that's now allegedly Thomas Massie's official position. Don't believe me? Look it up. The man who staked his political career on reading the files is getting his factual positions from a Twitter poll. All right? That's a man who disappeared into the algorithm and forgot to come back. The fight that Massie is picking right now is a fight that costs him everything and delivers the movement a funeral instead of a victory. Trump secured the border, and you saw it in the numbers. Trump passed tax cuts, and people kept more of their money. We felt that. We saw that. Massie voted no on a spending bill, and the spending bill passed anyway. And then Massie went home to his farm. The Liberty Movement needs people who know how to win things, not just people who know how to be right about them. I know what you'll say. Oh, Austin, well, you lost things. Yeah, but I never learned to like it. I didn't learn to love it. I didn't embrace losing. I didn't make it a part of my personality. It's not who I am. Now, Justin Amash, who I respect enough to say he was wrong to impeach Trump. That was a huge mistake. The Russia collusion hoax was just that, a hoax. And now look at us. Justin Amash, not in Congress anymore. Wouldn't we be better off if he hadn't done that? What a stupid mistake. If Massie wins today, there still has to be a conversation about what's going to come next for the Liberty Movement. What is the next move? Right? That is the strategy, the winning strategy, call everyone pedos and Jews forever. How are you going to build a healthy, non-toxic Liberty Movement out of that? Who's going to want to be a part of that in the future? These are real questions, and I think they deserve real answers. And then, finally, there's the transparency standard that Massie himself built. Powerful people use their positions to cover things up, and the American people deserve the truth regardless of who gets embarrassed. He said that about Epstein. He said that about the DOJ. He said that about Trump. Transparency for everyone, No exceptions. No carve-outs. And yet, in February of this year, Massie took to the House floor under the protection of the speech or debate clause and named Leon Black, declaring that Black, quote, needs to be investigated, and that you don't even have to see past the redactions to know he was implicated in Epstein's operation. Well, guess what? Leon Black had already been investigated by federal prosecutors, by state prosecutors, for fabricated child sex crimes. Leon Black was cleared. So Thomas Massie, the man who built his entire brand on releasing the files and reading them, apparently had not gotten around to reading them. And the speech and debate clause, which Massie himself has publicly noted protects him from defamation suits for anything said on the floor, is the shield that he is using to name private citizens in child sex trafficking cases without doing his homework. That's not transparency. That's the government power he claims to oppose pointed at private individuals while he sits behind constitutional immunity protecting the man pulling the trigger. So when Axios confirmed that Massie's political account was hiding replies on posts from users who linked to the allegations against him, the man who spent a year demanding everyone else release the files is hiding replies on his own account on the day that allegations drop against him. That's a fact. A Florida woman named Cynthia West came forward with a sworn statement alleging that Massie got her a congressional staffer job because that he became emotionally abusive when she refused conduct she found uncomfortable, and then allegedly had her fired via text, and then allegedly offered $5,000 in cash, which he called cow money, right? So she also refused a $60,000 settlement offer from the Office of Congressional Workplace Rights with a mandatory NDA attached. She claims she refused both. Now, the allegations that she makes, many of them are unverified, and this interview was conducted by a documented Gallrein operative and deployed by Eric Dieters, who is a former primary challenger to Massie, who's now running for governor, and he's made destroying Massie's career his entire personality. So that's sus. Right? Those conflicts of interest belong in the record, and I have put them there. Massie's own defender then went on the record and said the cash offer probably didn't happen because Massie's a millionaire and $5,000 is too low a price. So he didn't say the bribery didn't happen. He argued about the amount. Now, Massie denied offering money for silence, and he denied unreported income. He said nothing about the relationship, nothing about the job, nothing about this Cracker Barrel meeting. But the standard is the one that Massie wrote. Release the receipts. Let the evidence speak. Let the chips fall where they may. He said that about Epstein. Now, when it comes to Massie and his role in the revolution or the liberty movement here in the United States, as far as I'm concerned, no matter what happens today, the revolution fucking continues. Massie or no Massie. This is not the black-pilled wing of the libertarian movement. We're going to make sure that no matter what happens in the future, that we're going to eke out a win either way. You see, there is this thing that people in power understand. They understand the heads I win, tails you lose strategy. And for too long, libertarians have looked at a loss and said, wow, it's over. It's too late. There's no voting your way out of this. There's no way we're going to have anything in the future of the United States like it was when we were kids. Doom, doom, doom. Well, I say bullshit to that. I'm sorry. No one man is too important for this movement to survive without him. And if you disagree with that, if this makes you angry that I think that people should be held to their own standards, maybe that is on you. Wake up, America, rise and freedom. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, we've been making the case pro and con for Thomas Massie. We're going to have a live debate here in a little bit less than 10 minutes. Thank you all for, well, it looks like we unlocked the bonus content today, which means you're going to get a great mini documentary. We're going to have a debate with Tom Pappert and Tiffany Cianci live in a little bit less than 10 minutes. But since you guys have unlocked the bonus content, level 1, then Siggy's mom is going to be back after her meeting in a few minutes, and she doesn't want to miss the debate. So come right back, Siggy's mom. We'll be right back with the Massie versus MAGA debate on the Wake Up America show and the 4 Liberty Network.
In the rough farming country of New Jersey, around 1754, a girl named Mary Ludwig was born who would one day stand shoulder to shoulder with cannon fire and earn a permanent place in the legend of the American Revolution. She would become known to history as Molly Pitcher. She grew up tough, working hard on her father's farm. In 1775, she married a young barber named William Hayes. When the war broke out, William enlisted in the Continental Army as an artilleryman. Most wives stayed home. Molly refused. She became a camp follower, one of the thousands of brave women who marched with the army, cooking, washing, nursing the wounded, and enduring the same hardships as the soldiers. By the summer of 1778, Molly was with her husband's unit in the sweltering heat of Monmouth, New Jersey. June 28, 1778, dawned brutally hot, one of the hottest days anyone could remember. The temperature climbed past 100 degrees. Men were dropping from heat stroke before the first shot was even fired. The Battle of Monmouth exploded into chaos. British and American forces slammed into each other across open fields. Cannon roared. Musket fire crackled like lightning. In the middle of it all, Molly Hayes moved like a woman possessed. She carried heavy buckets of water from a nearby spring to the exhausted, parched soldiers. Time after time, she ran through smoke and flying lead. "Here comes Molly with the pitcher." The thirsty men began calling her Molly Pitcher. Then disaster struck her own cannon crew. Her husband, William, collapsed beside his gun, overcome by heat and exhaustion. The crew was short-handed and about to abandon the piece. Molly dropped her water bucket, wiped the sweat and gunpowder from her face, and stepped forward. "Stand back, boys," she said. "This gun needs firing." She grabbed the rammer staff and took her husband's place at the cannon. For the rest of that long, blazing afternoon, Molly Pitcher loaded, rammed, and fired the cannon with deadly accuracy. British cannonballs streamed past her. Musket balls whistled by her head. The ground shook beneath her feet from the recoil. Smoke stung her eyes and burned her lungs. Still she worked, sponging the barrel, loading powder and shot, and pulling the lanyard again and again. Soldiers who watched her could hardly believe their eyes. A woman covered in sweat and grime, standing tall in the middle of a battlefield, working a cannon like a seasoned gunner. One British cannonball came so close it tore through the bottom of her dress between her legs. Molly looked down and kept loading. When the smoke finally cleared at the end of that brutal day, the Battle of Monmouth ended in a hard-fought American stand. General George Washington himself rode across the field and noticed the remarkable woman still standing by her cannon. Legend says he removed his hat, bowed slightly, and called her Sergeant Molly. After the war, Molly returned to Carlisle, Pennsylvania. She lived a hard but proud life. In 1822, the Pennsylvania legislature recognized her service and granted her a small military pension, one of the very few given to a woman for direct combat service in the Revolution. She died on January 22, 1832, at nearly 80 years old. Molly Pitcher was never a general. She never led armies. She was a farmer's daughter, a soldier's wife, and a woman who refused to stand on the sidelines while freedom was being fought for. On the hottest day of the war, when men were falling from heat and British steel, she picked up a rammer and stepped into hell itself. She carried water until the water ran out. Then she carried the fight. From the muddy roads of the march to the smoke-choked fields of Monmouth, Molly Pitcher showed the world that courage has no gender, and that sometimes the bravest soldier on the battlefield isn't wearing a uniform. She's carrying a water bucket and then a cannon rammer. Her story still thunders across American history. The day a woman stood tall in the cannon smoke and helped win the fight for liberty. Molly Pitcher, the heroine of Monmouth, and a true daughter of the American Revolution.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. with sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be.
Welcome back to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. This morning, we're talking about the fight that has split the liberty right, the MAGA right, and half the internet. Thomas Massie is facing Ed Gallrein in Kentucky's 4th District. Massie is the incumbent. He's an MIT engineer, a farmer, the debt clock guy, the raw milk guy, and one of the most consistent no votes in Congress. He's also being hit by Trump, by outside money, by pro-Israel groups, by his GOP critics, and by personal allegations from Cynthia West that Massie denies. Tiffany Cianci has been on the ground in Kentucky defending Massie and arguing this race is about whether America is still for sale. Tom Pappert has gone the other way. He says he wanted to support Massie, but now sees him as a liability because of the Epstein strategy, the allegations, and the coalitions forming around him. This morning, both sides are going to get hard questions. Welcome to the Wake Up America show, Tiffany and Tom. Nice to see you today. Thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here, Austin. Good to meet you, Tiffany.
Thanks for joining us. Tiffany, I'm going to give you the first shot at it, first crack. So I want you to make the strongest case for Thomas Massie. Why should a Kentucky Republican voter tuning in today choose Massie over Trump's endorsed candidate? We lost your audio there, Tiffany. You were there and now you're gone.
Can you hear me?
Now you're back. Go ahead.
Okay, I was asked by your staff to let everybody know what's going on over here. Most of my audience knows that I have 8 tumors in my vocal cords and I might have a year left to speak. My machine that makes it so I can speak and breathe broke yesterday. I've been making videos about it all day trying to find a new one. So I'm going to sound strange, just like Bobby Kennedy does. And I'm going to do my best, but I'm going to struggle to breathe a little bit, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to take big breaths, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm not, like, trying to give you what I have. I've been on a substitute machine for 4 hours this morning. We'll see what we can do.
Okay, go ahead.
Honestly, when we came to Kentucky, we didn't come to Kentucky to tell anyone how to vote. I'm not here with the group of creators I assembled to come here and tell people who to vote for. The reality is that foreign interests have poured 25 to 35, we don't know the exact number now, $1 million into the state of Kentucky to tell the people how to vote, to tell the people they didn't have a say in an election that normally costs $100,000. They came here and they said that young people shouldn't even need to vote. They've suppressed all of the advertising that would go there by focusing all of it on boomer-oriented organizations. They've told them that that's the way that they should do things and that they were to do what they were told. Donald Trump described this race as a warm body he needed because Kentucky would vote how he told them to and how his allies told him to, right? And so for me, coming to Kentucky with a huge coalition of creators was to come here, and we have not told a single person how to vote, not anybody in my camp. Right? What we have come here to do is to tell the young people what they need to know to get out and vote, because young people favor Massie 82% of the time. Right? You go to the millennials and you've still got 77% of the time. It's not until you get to 65 and over that it's a dead heat. Right? Anybody under the age of 65, Thomas Massie is winning them, which is why the Israel-backed lobby and other corporate.
Looks like she's frozen a little bit there, Tom. So might be a good. Tiffany froze for a moment. Go ahead and complete your thought.
All I'm saying is that when you have that much money focused on suppressing a young vote, we want to make sure that every young voter knows their vote matters. They already know who to vote for. We don't have to tell them how to do that. We don't have to say a word because they already choose Massie. They choose him every time. So we've come here to make sure it's fair and to use our influence to level the playing field.
All right. Thank you, Tiffany, for your opening statement. Tom, you get 2 minutes. Now make the strongest case against Thomas Massie. Why should a voter who likes low spending, civil liberties, or anti-war Republicans still decide Massie's become a bad bet?
Thank you, Austin. And Tiffany, believe it or not, you sound really impressive. I was warned by Austin. I was watching some of your videos, and I think you're coming. Great job. Great job.
Thanks.
Thomas Massie is a nice guy. I have no doubt about that. His house looks really cool. His pizza making abilities seem to be up there with any New York Italian, but he is a completely ineffective congressman. If you support everything that Austin just named, if you are a guy who got into politics in 2008 or 2012 because of Ron Paul, that was me, by the way, then you had a lot of hope for Thomas Massie. You thought that he was going to come into Congress and achieve some libertarian goals. Well, now here we are more than a decade later, and what has Thomas Massie done? Well, he has enamored half the country with a dead pedophile and claims that there were rich, powerful men who somehow are being protected by President Donald Trump. And he's called President Donald Trump Massie's biggest opportunity to make a difference, to get some libertarian headway in terms of policy from the president. What has he done? Well, he's called President Trump part of the Epstein class, which, as I understand it, is suggesting that Trump is either friends with or actively a pedophile himself. So I think that Massie has essentially burnt his political legacy. He has made it impossible for him to turn around and reunify with the Republican Party. And now he's actually serving a disservice to libertarians. You're seeing it all over on X. People think that Thomas Massie is representative of every libertarian in the country, and they're calling for the liberty wing of the Republican Party to be purged. I think it's better that we get rid of this lightning rod of poor decision making rather than risk losing the liberty movement as a whole.
Tiffany, what's something that you think that the Trump people are missing about Thomas Massie? If you could zero in on one thing that the other side is either ignoring, on purpose, or perhaps they're just going right over their heads, what is it?
Honestly, I think the thing that everyone's refusing to acknowledge, not missing, but refusing to acknowledge, is that Thomas Massie is the only person left in Congress right now that is delivering on the platform that Trump promised. He's delivering on so many issues that Trump promised. He said he was going to drain the swamp. He said he was going to cut spending. He said he was going to enact the DOGE cuts that were recommended. He said that he was going to enact MAGA and then protect MAGA and give Bobby Kennedy free reign to run wild on everything but oil. He told everybody that he was going to cut spending, and I think that's the biggest one, but also release the Epstein files. And Thomas Massie has relentlessly pursued the mandate that the American people gave to Trump, who has failed to deliver on every one of those issues, or has even obstructed that. I think that's what people are missing, but I don't think they're missing it. I think they're afraid that people are going to continue to recognize it while he continues to stay the course that the American people called for. That's what I think.
Tom, what do you think that the pro-Massie people are missing?
Well, I think that Tiffany's answer is kind of illustrative. It's almost as though we're living in two parallel realities. The only thing that she mentioned that I would say is true, arguably, is the Epstein files. President Trump argued and campaigned on things like no tax on tips, things like no tax on Social Security, both accomplished in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. He also campaigned on becoming a lockdown southern border and a mass deportation strategy, both things accomplished through the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. If Massie had been smart, if he had been a capable politician and a good representative of the liberty movement, he would have gone to President Trump and he would have gone to Republican leadership and said, okay, I don't like some parts of the big, beautiful bill. It's going to increase the deficit. Can we get one of my priorities? Can we make gold a legal competing currency? Can we stop the persecution against cryptocurrency miners and Bitcoin holders, et cetera? And instead, what did Thomas Massie do? He voted against it, doubled down by calling Trump part of the Epstein class, and now, in all reality, we could be witnessing his last 12 hours in politics.
Tiffany, if a Republican congressman, if he keeps voting against Trump's priorities, how many times does he get to do that before Trump voters are allowed to say the guy is against our agenda?
Prior to 4 weeks ago, he had voted with Trump and the Republicans in lockstep 91% of the time. And as he very famously quoted, the other 9%, they were taking up with pedophiles, corporate interests, and acting against the American people and favoring FISA, warrantless surveillance of Americans, right? The last few weeks, he's demonstrated beautifully where Trump has absolutely failed or even obstructed his own agenda. When we talk about MAGA, many people know I'm a force in the MAGA movement. I was Bobby Kennedy's largest delivery in the last election. I delivered him over 650,000 conservatives to come to his table, right? I did that because I gave him access to my platform. I was also his largest creator that made content for him, 261 viral videos. Nobody knows the MAGA agenda better than me. And President Trump told him he was going to get to enact what MAGA was calling for. Well, instead, what President Trump did is he took Susie Wiles as his chief of staff, which in my opinion was the worst mistake he's ever made. And in doing so, allowed Bayer Monsanto and Pfizer to own this administration from day one. What they've done is spend tens of millions of dollars, and he has allowed it, affected it and then pushed everybody else to allow it as well. They've put tens of millions of dollars in to force through pesticide immunity, which is the single biggest mistake his entire administration has made, because his own politicians are afraid to stand with it now, even though they keep forcing it through. He told them he was going to be able to move on tons of science-based initiatives. He told them that he was going to be able to move forward on pesticides, on forever chemicals, and then he put Lee Zeldin and Brooke Rollins at the head of the two agencies that had to work with him. The only person standing up for all those MAGA moms is Massie, and he has done it beautifully and effectively. And we've seen that with 5 separate attempts to try to deliver pesticide immunity. He is getting things done.
Okay.
He's getting them done.
All right, let's let Tom respond to those accusations. Tom?
Yeah.
Well, I don't get it. I'm sorry, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has spent like 40 years of his life. The day he got off heroin, he decided he was going to dedicate himself to fixing this country's environment, to going and cleaning the rivers and lakes and getting rid of this agricultural pollution caused by the pharmaceutical industry, etc. He's been given nothing. There's been the one issue, as you mentioned, there's been the roundup or to something to that effect. But are you turning on him? And if so, would you not turn on Massie in 18 months if he doesn't give you every single thing you want? I mean, it seems as though you're telling us that your judgment in 2024 was flawed if you worked this hard to get Robert F. Kennedy Jr. into the Trump administration, and then Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is doing pull-ups and saying that he loves the administration, but you say he's failed. So is Massie going to fail too?
I didn't say he's failed, and I didn't say I was turning on Bobby. I said Trump had failed to give him the mandate he was delivered to give him by surrounding him with corporate interests, lobbyists, and obstructionists.
Why is he putting up with this? Why is Kennedy putting up with this?
I can't speak for Bobby Kennedy. I absolutely favor Bobby Kennedy, and I know he's doing everything he can. But the reality is that the only thing he has control over at the EPA and the USDA is what the MAGA Commission allows him. He needed people in charge over at those two agencies to affect his agenda, which Trump promised to do, and instead put in 2 people hand-selected by Bear Monsanto and Susie Wiles that have obstructed him at every single turn. And we saw that in the difference between the first and second MAGA Commission report. Again, if you saw the turnout, more than 400,000 phone calls to the switchboard in 3 days 2 weeks ago on this one issue to Republican offices, there's a reason they backed down and they stripped it for the 3rd time. But again, Massie is effectively leading. He is effectively doing it. His name wasn't on that final amendment, but he got it there, and he's the reason it happened. And so nobody can tell me that he isn't effectively leading. He, again, votes with his party and his caucus 91% of the time. But the other 9%, he is effectively doing what the American people called on Trump to do and what Trump promised them he was going to do.
Now, the Epstein strategy, Massie's defenders say that he forced transparency, but his critics say that he turned child sex abuse victims into online content. So, I mean, where is the line between using attention to force accountability and then using victims to build your brand, Tiffany?
As somebody who's interviewed almost all of the same victims that Massie has, I find that vulgar and disgusting. What we're doing is we are giving the victims a platform to have their voice heard where Congress has failed them or had failed them until they started having the hearings. Most of them have still not had their voices heard. And to be clear, all of the cases where they were allowed to testify, and most people don't recognize why this is a risk, most of the cases where they did get to have their voices heard, where the documents were able to be seen, they were put under seal and they were ordered not to speak until they were given another subpoena or a release from the government to be allowed to speak without risk of defamation. And nobody knows better than Tom and I what lawfare can come when a big corporation feels like they want to come at you with lawfare because you did something that a court told you couldn't do. He gave voice to those women, and so did Lauren Boebert and Nancy Mace and Ro Khanna and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And those victims, I've sat in those rooms. I've been at every press conference, and they have never been more grateful for anything that's happened to them since the day that they crawled their way out of the hole that they were drug into as children. And I've got to say, given how many have taken their lives, I think now having a voice is empowering them and frankly saving a lot of them.
Okay, Tom, your response to that.
There's so much to say about the Epstein issue. I would say first and foremost that if those victims have a list of men who they remember, who they say victimized them and were associates paying Jeffrey Epstein for the disgusting privilege, then I don't understand. I will never understand. I'll go to my grave without the understanding why they did not give Tom Massie and Ro Khanna the list. That was how this all started in my mind, was Thomas Massie was going to go into Congress and read a list of powerful men and abusers, and he was going to use the speech and debate clause. That way, those poor victims would not be victimized further by the criminal justice system, etc. That seems to have disappeared. Nobody can really give a satisfactory answer on that. And in fact, nobody can give a satisfactory answer about why these millions of pages that Massie and his Democratic allies got released are insufficient. I've read tons of them. I know people in the Epstein files, and they're like schizophrenic madmen who ramble through the streets. But one time they said something about Epstein in a police report, and then now they're in the Epstein files. I would just quickly add one other thing, by the way. I know Massie likes to say he votes 91% with the Republicans. Within the current term, it's more like 77.8%. John McCain, when he died, was voting 80% with Trump. So I don't think that's a good metric.
Yeah, and I'd like to reset here real quick and remind everyone who's just tuning into the Wake Up America show. We're having a debate this morning, Massie versus MAGA. We are hosted here by Tiffany. We're guested here by Tiffany Cianci, and we're also joined by Tom Pappert. Tom Pappert is taking the MAGA case, and Tiffany is taking the Massie case. Don't forget to click the like button and follow if you enjoy conversations like these. Now, Tom, the biggest challenge that I've heard in the Kentucky race that I think would resonate with people for the MAGA, against the MAGA people rather, is that Ed Gallrein has not showed up to many events. He hasn't been doing any debates. People don't know a lot about him. He quit the Republican Party. He became an independent. Then he decided to come back later and run as a Republican. I mean, Trump himself said that he just wanted a warm body to take over Massie. I mean, is that really a replacement? Somebody who's an MIT engineer, somebody who has a background, a history in fighting for liberty in this country, and we just are going to throw him out because of a fight with the president? I mean, what's the case for Ed Gallrein?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, because Massie does have an impressive background. There's no disagreeing with that. I would argue Ed Gallrein has exactly as impressive background. He is a fifth generation Shelby County Kentuckian. He is a farmer, comes from a farming family. In fact, his family currently operates a popular destination farm that is operating, has animals, has livestock, etc. He was a Navy SEAL, says he was part of SEAL Team 6, had multiple deployments, has Bronze Stars. He has been picked by Trump. Yes, in the beginning, Trump was making some comments saying, all I need is a warm body to get rid of this horrible guy, Massie, who votes with the Democrats, almost made it so we couldn't have the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, etc. But they found a very good candidate. My understanding is Gallrein changed his party position, changed his party registration in 2016. There was a lot of things happening back then. Maybe he was upset with Trump. Maybe he believed the mainstream media. What I think is more important and more telling about his character is that in, I think it was April or maybe June of 2021, just a few months into the Biden experience, the worst 4 political years in this country's recent history, he changed his party registration, party affiliation back to Republican. And before you know it, in 2024 was like 100 votes shy of becoming a state lawmaker. So I don't think it's accurate to say that he's just a warm body, that he's a nobody, that people don't know who he is. He's campaigned in the district, or at least near the district, for coming up on 2.5 years now. His family has been there for longer than many of the anti-Massie people's families have been in the country. And I guess he's not an MIT guy.
Okay. Well, all right. Tiffany, your response.
So first of all, I'm going to say that one of the things that everyone keeps leaving out when we talk about Ed Gallrein's beautiful track record of running for office in the district, even though he's failed at every time he's tried, is that when he left the Republican Party, and frankly, a lot of voters might not care about this, but the Republicans sure should. The reason he left the Republican Party is because he got a job for 5 years serving as a consultant for businesses, teaching them how to better effectively commit to their DEI policies. He taught them how to use pronouns in their bylines. He taught them how to use gender neutral language, and he taught them how to effectuate training for their staff to make it a more DEI friendly place, which seems kind of interesting that people would be targeting him as the candidate of choice for Trump, given his perspective on those issues. But then as soon as this race began, that conspicuously 5 days in was taken off of his LinkedIn profile. You have to go look at Wayback Machine to see it, right? That's what he did when he left. It was for money. He changed his affiliation for money, and he changed it back as soon as he thought he didn't have that money anymore and needed money a different way. That just makes him an opportunist.
That's
now,
interesting.
If he were running,
first time I've heard that. I'd like to move to another set of questions to talk about.
Can I just finish real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just
Go
real
ahead.
quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Complete your thought.
I have been here on the ground for 10 days, and I have been to his events. And when I tell you, I have published this very broadly. He's not trying. He'll take one question, shut it down, and walk out of the room when people ask why he won't debate Thomas Massie. And so I ask you, Republican Party, how is he going to debate Hakeem Jeffries on the floor like Thomas Massie does for his voters every single day when he can't even stand up and defend his position in this state? He's had 5 followers, 5 viewers at his average campaign stop, and they trusted this election so much that when Hegseth flew in yesterday, they gave him a whopping 84 chairs in the smallest ballroom at the hotel he went to, and 13 of them were empty. Okay, nobody believes that he's doing anything to inspire the people.
I think she made her point. Well done there. Now, Tom, I'd like to talk about the Cynthia West stuff because these allegations mysteriously dropped days before the primary. Massie is denying any wrongdoing. So his supporters are saying the timing looks like a hit. It is rather suspect to have these kinds of sexual assault allegations happening a week before the primary. I've always personally had a standing rule to not believe any kinds of sexual assault allegations because I saw what happened to Brett Kavanaugh, Tom. So is there any reason why people should apply some kind of different standard of evidence to the allegations against Thomas Massie than we did against the ones against Kavanaugh?
Well, I do just want to be clear, and in defense of Massie, I don't think there's any claim of assault or anything improper. I think the claim is, and I don't want to be vulgar, it's too early in the morning, but I think the claim is that Tom Massie has some odd preferences in the bedroom. And I think that the interview with Laura Loomer and some of the other things that have come out in the last few days, what they really illustrate instead, in my mind, and it goes back to the entire case against Massie, is its bad judgment. He gets into a relationship with a woman. There are dozens of text messages that have now been leaked that claim to prove this relationship existed. And it reveals that he is texting. He's like sexting with this woman, allegedly. He is just months after his wife died, introducing her to his children. I don't think it makes sense. He successfully, I should say, according to Laura Loomer's interview and this person who claims that she was in a relationship, he got this woman hired. Is that not graft? Is that not grift? He got her hired on the Hill at one of his friend's offices. Then it was Victoria Sparks. She has a notoriously high turnover in her office. When she got fired and Massie's Bell wanted to do something about it, Massie said, and I quote, according to this interview, "You're just one person. What do you think you could really do?" So I don't think that this is anything about sexual impropriety. I don't even think it matters that it was so close to the very tragic passing of Massie's first wife. I think what this story tells us, if it is true, is that Massie is just like everybody else on the Hill. He is a horn dog who gets his girlfriends hired. That's who Massie is.
Well, here's the thing, and Tiffany, I'd be curious how you respond to this, is that Massie set a standard for transparency, that powerful men use their positions of power to sexually abuse women who work under them. And if any of these allegations are true, then Thomas Massie setting a standard of transparency, well, that should work both ways. So my question is, do you believe that Thomas Massie had a relationship with Cynthia West that was inappropriate, where he had a position of power over her, and then tried to use bribery or extortion to try and get to silence her?
So I'm going to start by saying that I am a huge fan of Rhonda. I knew her. I knew Thomas Massie, his family. I met them several times. I spoke at the Libertarian conventions, and I spent a great deal of time with her there. I also know how he responded after she died. He worshiped that woman, worshiped her. And I can't even imagine the grieving he went through. And she died after what is none of my business to disclose is a very long illness where the family was grieving in advance. And I am not going to tell anyone how to grieve. I'm also not going to question his relationship here because for nearly a decade, I was a Republican strategist on the Hill for senators. And I know that if anyone in the Republican Party believed for a second this story had legs, they would have released it a week and a half out and not on the first day of early voting. They knew that it would get ripped to shreds because it was laughable. Most of these text messages read like texts between two friends walking through security at the airport, literally. It's jokes. And nobody believes that this is real. And for anybody who's worked on the Hill, myself included, there's not a job in D.C. that you don't get by knowing somebody not square one, including the ones I got.
Okay,
To be very frank.
Okay.
But no, I don't believe that. And if you're saying he has some strange ideas in the bedroom, I'm from Vegas, and he hasn't said anything that could ever make me blush.
Okay.
I'm happy to give you a tutorial if you want to know a little bit about like how fun it could be, but like he's been tame. Very tame.
Well, hold on, but this is different than just knowing somebody. You know, I know people in DC. Maybe I could get a job if I started making questions. This is her boyfriend. This is her boyfriend who is a U.S. Congressman.
We don't know that.
This is what the
we don't know that.
This is the claim in the interview. This is the claim that's being put forward. The claim is that she calls up her, or the boyfriend, I guess, comes up with the idea. Tom Massie says, I want this girl to be in D.C. with me. It's inconvenient that we're in different states all the time. And he calls up his friend, Victoria Spartz, and he says, I know your office has a horrific turnover. Let's hire my girlfriend. And then Victoria says, sounds great. I've already got it lined up. Then, according to the interview, he calls up his girlfriend and he says, I have the solution to all our problems. You're going to move to Washington, D.C., and you're going to work for my friend, Victoria Spartz. Either that or we're breaking up.
Are you referencing the Laura Loomer interview?
That's what's been made in the Laura Loomer interview. That's also what's been said in the public deposition that predates Laura Loomer, predates this ever becoming a story.
Tiffany, I'll let you respond.
I would point out that when Nancy Mace brought her bill to the floor to expose every payoff and bribe that's ever happened when women or men have been mistreated in Washington by senators, the Senate slush fund to pay off victims, he was one of the only Republicans that voted for it. If he had anything to hide, he wouldn't have fought so hard to pass it. He does favor transparency. I absolutely do not believe there's anything to this. And I know the strategists know that, or they would have released it 2 weeks ago and given it time to actually work. You only do something like this on the day the election begins if it's your Hail Mary and you want to suppress turnout. And every strategist knows it.
Okay, guys, I'm going to give you guys a quick little break and remind our viewers and listeners that they're tuned into the Wake Up America show, and I'm their host, Austin Peterson. If today is your first time watching the show and you're enjoying this content, we're so glad and thankful to have you here, and I'm so glad that I get to introduce you on such an exciting day. We're having a MAGA versus Massie debate this morning, and my guests today are Tiffany Cianci and making the Massie case, and we have Tom Pappert, who's making the MAGA case, both pro and con with Thomas Massie. Do click the like button if you haven't already, and the follow button if today is your first time watching the Wake Up America show. Helps support the network, where you get more great debates and conversations like this that nobody else is going to have on the internet. So come back and join us. This show is live Mondays through Fridays, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. That's the Wake Up America show schedule, and we're sticking to it. Now, Tiffany, back to you, because instead of talking about the Prime Act or a lot of the issues that really matter, the internet has been having a conversation about this photograph that Thomas Massie took with a gentleman by the name of Ryan Matta, who I don't know a lot about. I just know that he frequently takes pictures wearing Nazi imagery, swastikas. He took a photograph with Thomas Massie with a shirt that said American Reich. Thomas Massie embraced him and invited him over to his private home. So what responsibility does a candidate have for radioactive people like that who show up in his coalition? Does he have any idea what this man is about, or?
I'm going to tell you that on any day that he saw him, because I didn't, I don't know him personally well, right? Like, I invited creators from all across the United States. But what I'm going to say is I've not had any chance to ask him whether he was doing something satirical or what he was insinuating. I have no problem saying I'm not comfortable with the language, right? But it was Benjamin Netanyahu that coined the phrase, the American woke Reich, when we were the ones trying to save TikTok from Larry Ellison buying it, acquiring it, and a foreign government getting access to control it when he said it was priority number one. So there's a lot of people that have done that. I personally would not do that. It's not something I do. But it's also not something I can speak to, except to say that when that photo was taken, there were 1,000 people lined up, and he wasn't looking at anything. I'm not going to speak for any of that. I'm a First Amendment absolutist. I'm somebody that says that if you're an a-hole, I don't want to curse on your show, but if you're an a-hole, I want you to wear whatever you're going to say so I know it right out front, right? Okay. I'm going to be very honest about that. I'm a First Amendment absolutist.
Agreed.
I want to know everything about you.
Agreed, but I'm not
going to speak to what he thinks or the other one thinks.
Sure, but I probably wouldn't invite them into my home. It's one thing to take a picture with him. It's another thing to have him running around where I live and my kids play.
So
Tom?
He didn't coordinate that trip.
Okay, I understand.
Massie had nothing to do with that.
Okay, Tom, your thoughts on him running around with Ryan Matta and, the kind of Groyper love for Thomas Massie?
Well, so there's a couple things about this Ryan Matta character. One, it wasn't just one photo, it wasn't just one day. The day after the photo was released, Ryan Matta was one of the people who was at Massie's home. And I don't think Massie is like, I don't think he lives in a mansion. I think it's a normal sized home. I think that he probably knew everybody who was in the home with him. Now, further,
no, he didn't, because I organized it. No, he did not. He didn't know who was coming. He just asked for a head count of how many creators showed up.
So you organized it and you let this guy, because that was my next point.
I organized a creator travel and we sent out an address to everyone.
Hold on, Tiffany. Let Tom respond now.
Holocaust denier who openly says that the Jews, 6 million Jews, were not killed in the Second World War. This is somebody who is an open anti-Semite. This is somebody that is essentially everything toxic you could possibly imagine to a Republican campaign.
This is something that's a distraction.
I'm gonna let you respond, Tiffany. I'm gonna let you respond, but go ahead, Tom.
Why was he invited?
Yeah, why was he? Why did you invite him, Tiffany? Did you know that? Did you know that about him before you invited him?
First of all, I don't know anything about him now. Literally, I've never engaged with his content before now. We sent out an all call for creators. People came from every state in the United States and abroad. We have dozens, and the ones that showed up, like we've sent out a schedule. Everybody can come as they are, and that was on the schedule for that day. And everyone that got the schedule was invited. That said, I don't know what his reasons are, but I will tell you the first time I saw him, it's because Laura Loomer's been on his show over and over again pitching her book. So please tell me how everyone's super worried about
yes, she's answered this. In 2023, before October 7th, apparently, before he changed his political views to be like a radical anti-Semite, yes, Laura Loomer was on the show.
Yeah, I'm not familiar. I've never been on his show.
Could I, like a pro-Galrine guy, could I have gone to Thomas Massie's house? I'm an influencer.
Yes, you absolutely could have. We had several progressives there.
So there was just no vetting whatsoever for this thing. Thomas lets anybody into his house who knocks on the door.
That's exactly what he did. We had 3 progressives that showed up that were not staunch Thomas Massie fans.
Progressives support Thomas Massie.
No, we had people from the other side that were there.
The most progressive person in Congress, is one of Massie's biggest cheerleaders. So I'm asking about Trump.
I would say Ro Khanna is one of the most populist members of Congress.
Could a Trump supporter have gone? Could a Trump supporter have gone to this Thomas Massie house?
There were more than a dozen Trump supporters. There were 3 progressives that were not supporters. There were several from the middle, and there were also several that are on the undecided
What is the argument
sides.
that we need this coalition of like neo-Nazis and progressives in order to have a liberty
don't
movement?
be disgusting.
No, that's a legitimate question. That's a legitimate question, and let's pause for just a moment because I do want to talk about the coalition question. You know, Thomas Massie, he's not been endorsed by Code Pink, but he has been touted by Code Pink. He has been embraced by some of the most toxic people on the left. People like AOC are out there running interference for him. The New York Times doesn't publish op-eds that are positive about Republicans, Tiffany, unless they get something out of it, because the left plays the long game and they know that any anti-Trump Republican is doing them a favor. So my question is do you think that there is a problem with the fact that many of the people in Thomas Massie's court, the people who are pushing for him the hardest, are some of the most far left communist Democrats? That's not a problem?
No, I don't think that at all, because you can look at the coalition that Trump built in the last election, where he courted Bobby Kennedy, who had an almost entirely progressive base when he started this election and ran as a Democrat. And I want to be very clear. I don't know enough about his perspectives to speak on that creator, but I do know this. It was less than a year ago, we're wearing a MAGA hat. People were saying you were a Nazi, and everybody had a problem with assuming that without asking what you think. I'm not going to get into it because, again, First Amendment absolutists, this is a distraction. Trump pioneered the new Big Tent campaign. He did that. He invited progressives into his camp. He invited Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard.
But he always specifically excluded Nazis, white nationalists. There was the
we
very
don't know
fine
that
people,
that's what this is, and I don't know that. I've already said that.
But the very fine people hoax was a big thing that the left pushed. And
I agree with that.
Trump has always very specifically attempted to exclude those people from his coalition. He's clean house. But Tom, she doesn't want to respond to that. She's a First Amendment absolutist. I'd like you to respond to it. Do you agree, Tom, that it is a problem that many people on the squad are out there touting him, or do you think that's just a guilt by association fallacy?
Well, I specifically with these like anti-Jew people, I think that you're almost running into like a philosophical question surrounding the non-aggression principle. Can you have Jews and people who want Jews to be dead? Can they both be in your coalition at once, so long as they are not one is actively not aggressing on the other? I don't think that is the case. I don't think that's how it works. I think that some people need to be excluded from the tent because their ideas are destructive to everybody else in the tent. Now, I think it's pretty clear at this point that the Democratic Party loves Thomas Massie. They know that he is the no vote. They know how much the Republicans have spent on this race trying to fix that situation, because there is no universe in which he will ever vote for a single Republican priority. They essentially view him
only
as
77% of them, right? Only 77% of their priorities.
Less than John McCain, less than the guy who saved Obamacare.
Only in this term, when he was forcing through warrantless
when
FISA
Trump is in
searches.
office. Yes, that's the term I care about. When Trump is in office.
Trump has been in office before, and it's been 91%. We're talking about a 4-week window.
Here's the problem, and Tiffany, I wonder when you say that the Trump administration is the Epstein administration, but you vote with them 77% of the time, isn't there a little bit of a problem when you say, I vote with the Jewish pedophiles 77% of the time?
I don't like the term Jewish pedophiles. That's really offensive to the Jewish people that I know and love. We're talking about a class of people that protect people, that hurt children, have sex with children, traffic children, and I don't think that's exclusionary to a specific race, creed, religion. We are talking about billionaires that are protecting their disgusting pedophile friends from answering for any of the disgusting things that they've done to children, young girls, and frankly, young boys for decades. And I don't think it's a Jewish pedophile ring. I don't think anyone should say that ever.
Am I out of line for suggesting that it's quite frequently the conversation online surrounding Massie that the people opposing him are Jewish pedophiles, Tom?
I think
maybe on Rumble.
I mean, on X, if you criticize Thomas Massie, I dare you, do it as an experiment. You will be inundated, even on your account where you are very pro-Massie and you're on the ground supporting him. If you were to make a post right now saying, I think it was a mistake for Ryan Matta to be allowed at those events, you would be called a Jew. You would be called a pedophile defender. That's what those of us who have the braveness, the temerity to stand up and say, I don't think this Massie guy is good for the party. That's what we get faced with.
You're talking about the bots, frankly. Like, people
So
want to
Massie
believe.
has
Like,
bots
wait,
supporting him?
let me respond. No. I'm not gonna. Let me finish what I was gonna say. Okay, I have built my entire platform on not being right or left. I'm not a member of the Republican Party, and I'm not a member of the Democratic Party, and I never have been. For 13 years, my Twitter bio has said the exact same thing. I like my politics like I like my Merlot, deep inky purple. I'm here for the people, and the people in the United States want both parties working together. The young people in the United States are desperate for it. They are drowning. And they want the politicians working together. And it was only until about 14 years ago, when Citizens United started to take effect, that we were forced to be divided by billionaire interests that pushed us to this corner. And bots are very effective, yes, on both sides of the aisle at continuing to keep us divided. But when you look at the actual values assessment of the United States, when you take two people on the same street, two people, one with a BLM flag and a pride flag, 3 houses down from me and across the street, and the one next door to me that is a Confederate flag flying in the back of his pickup truck, and that's really my neighborhood, by the way, in True Blue, Maryland. That's where I live. They have 93% of their values in common. 93%. 93%. It is the 3.5% on the far left and the far right that they use to divide us. And bot manipulation is one of the single most effective tactics that are used on social media to keep us divided and believing it's 50-50. We agree on 93% of the things. And Thomas Massie, sometimes he teams up with Ro Khanna or Marjorie Taylor Greene or Nancy Mace, or sometimes he stays 91% of the time in every administration prior to 4 months ago and 77% of the time in the last 5 weeks while we're surveilling Americans, right? With his party, because that's his beliefs. But you know what the American people do want? They want them working together because we can't take anymore. The young people really can't take anymore. And he's delivering that for them. And that's why he wins them 82% of the time.
Tom?
And yes, bots are a huge part of that.
Tom, your response?
I don't think it's bots. I think the fact that people like Ryan Matta show up, they fly. I think he lives out of the country.
Can we talk about Massie, please?
So
Please?
this is emblematic.
You only need a distraction like this when you're worried today's going to go badly.
I mean,
can we please talk about Thomas Massie?
Let's talk about if today goes badly.
These are his
either side. Hold on. Let's talk about if today goes badly. Tom, if Thomas Massie wins his primary today, would you encourage voters in his congressional district to vote for him, the Republican over the Democrat?
I mean, this is such I'm glad you asked the question, because it is an overwhelmingly Republican district. If Massie manages to eke out a win today, the Republican will win in November, and it will be a good thing because the Democrats don't deserve a win. But it will be bad for the country because Thomas Massie is going to help the Democrats stall Trump for the second 2 years of the administration. And if they are successful, they will use Massie to get a Democrat elected in 2028. So it will be good for the short term, bad for the long term. I would never tell somebody, go vote for the Democrat. No, this is the Republican Party. Kentucky should absolutely vote for the Republican nominee in the 4th district. If that happens to be Massie, I'll be disappointed, but it won't be the end of the world.
Okay, so Massey's been in Congress since 2012. He votes no. He annoys leadership. His supporters love that. But Tiffany, what does he actually accomplish? I want you to talk about the practical wins.
Beautiful.
Hold on. Spending stopped, surveillance blocked, wars opposed, oversight forced. Give us the case without just saying he's principled.
So I'm just going to give you the case on the last year alone, okay? Because we've been talking a lot about how often he votes with the party. A lot of the distractions have been he's only passed one piece of legislation, not true, by the way. But what he's done is he's focused entirely on what people have asked him to do while sticking to his principles. Everybody knows he's a fiscal conservative. And so he often works very, very hard to try and limit or reduce the deficit, which is what I think every American wants. But when we talk about the things he's managed to do, many of them are in service of what President Trump promised the American people. We can look at what he did with the appropriations bill in the House, where he got, again, pesticide immunity stripped out so children can be healthier and we can get rid of chronic disease in America, right? Simultaneously, he did that again in the Farm Bill. But that's not all he did in the Farm Bill. He also got his Prime Act enacted, which supports every small American farmer in the United States. That Prime Act could create a resurgence. There were 200,000 meat packing and breakdown facilities in the United States just a decade ago, and we're down to less than 1,000, all owned by billionaire overseas international interests, mostly Chinese and Brazilian. All of our American businesses that practiced with these farms are gone. They've been forced out of service. And he got the Prime Act into that Farm Bill, and that's going to serve every farmer in America, which is so important because right now we're expected to have 140,000 American farms go out of business or bankrupt this year. And that's without even accounting for the fact that our fertilizer is up 78% because it's stuck in the Strait of Hormuz. Now let's talk about no new wars. He's absolutely opposed wars. And every young person wants that. Well, Ed Galrain is out here asking for the draft to be reenacted and for mandatory military service to be effected in the same thread as the IDF. His words, not mine. Okay. Now, when we look at other things he's done, 3 weeks ago in the Judiciary Committee, just 3 weeks ago, there was a bill that was about to be rubber stamped by the left and the right because corporate interests paid for it to be so, that was called the Protect American AI Act. And it was granting immunity to data center builders. The single greatest issue by capita that is being talked about online today. And he was the only one that went out and called on people to apply pressure to kill that bill. And it was killed. And I'm very, very proud of that. But we can move beyond that to the Epstein Transparency Act. We can continue past that and talk about other bills he's worked on.
We do have a little bit of time left to maybe get there, but I want to hop in here because I want to ask Tom a difficult question. Tom, AIPAC is pouring millions into this race. This is the most expensive congressional race of all time. Now, AIPAC is an American institution that is dedicated to a foreign institution, which is the Israeli government. Do you see a problem with all of this spending from all of these outside groups and these billionaires like Sheldon Adelson coming in? And if Thomas Massie loses, I mean, in some ways, isn't this kind of a case against this Trump strategy that instead of it being some kind of a grassroots campaign that 5 or 6 people can come in and buy a primary? What is your take on the AIPAC angle that many of Massie's defenders are using?
I know it's a very popular angle, and I'm glad you asked the question because Massie himself benefits from the same exact sort of money network that he and his supporters complain about. There's a billionaire out there. He's actually not just a billionaire. He's the richest guy in the state of Pennsylvania. His name is Jeffrey Yass, and he happens to be a big Massie supporter. And so far this year, he's given $7 million to a political action committee that supports Massie. They have reportedly spent at least $1 million of that on supporting him. Jeffrey Yass is a Zionist. He supports Israel. He gives millions and millions of dollars to pro-Israeli and Zionist causes, and he loves Tom Massie. He says it's because Massie is into school choice. So this happens on both sides. In fact, if you've been around the block a few times, you can recognize that there is a different ecosystem. There is a generic Republican one. There is a liberty Republican one. And they support various different candidates. It is very rare to see what we've seen with Thomas Massie, where we have Massie going out and doing everything he can to alienate donors like Jeff Yass, and yet the guy has still given $7 million. So I wish we lived in a world where, 20 years ago, the Supreme Court decided a different way, but we live in a world that is dominated by political spending in terms of dollars and cents, and I think that Massie benefits from it just as much, especially historically, as his opponent.
Your response.
Can I respond to that? Yeah. So first of all, what I want to say is that this race in this state usually costs fewer than $100,000, $150,000 on the outside if you look at years past. Okay, there is nobody that ever would have poured $7 million, and I don't actually think that's the right number, $7 million into this race.
Publicly verifiable.
If three billionaires had not very publicly pumped $35 million into a race that usually costs $100,000. But I will say this, Thomas Massie has been the largest recipient of small dollar donations of any Republican candidate by number of donations per percentage of donations he's received of any Republican candidate in the last 20 years. He's had donations pouring in from young people, $5, $10, $20, and it is because young people see what's happening here. You're right, there is money in politics. It is vulgar, it is disgusting, but it is something else entirely when three people have entirely funded Ed Calrain raised less than $1 million total. Okay, you're saying 7 million of the 20 million raised by Massie or whatever came from one man. That means he raised a hell of a lot more in small donations.
No. I just want to stop because this was in addition to. This was not. You can't just give 7 million to a campaign, obviously. So that's dark money or PAC money, et cetera. I just wanted to clarify.
Let me finish real quick. Okay, so when you're talking about having the highest percentage of small donations from regular people that any Republican has had in decades, it's because they like what he's doing. They want people that work for them. They don't want people that are beholden to big money interests in DC that vote with integrity. And I want to be clear, if Thomas Massie were crossing and doing whatever that man wanted, Jeffrey Yass, they would stop giving him money, but he doesn't. He votes with exactly what he promises he's going to do every time, and that's what people trust. It's not what he says, it's that he does what he says he's going to do, and that's what people want from politicians. Okay. Whether that means working across the aisle or working with your party, 91% of the time, except the last 5 weeks where we had warrantless surveillance on Americans.
Okay, so we've reached the end of our debate right now, and I want to give you both the opportunity to make your closing statements, as well as promote or plug any websites or social media links that you'd like. Tom, I'll go ahead and give you, because Tiffany just spoke, I'll give you the first closing statement. Go ahead and give us your minute-and-a-half argument for why Thomas Massie deserves to lose this afternoon, and go ahead and promote what you'd like.
I think that Thomas Massie has proven himself to be an influencer, a podcast host. He's anything but a congressman. He wants to be a celebrity. He has achieved this, and he can go do it in the private sector where the taxpayer doesn't have to pay him. He has done virtually nothing in his time in Congress except smear the most successful Republican president in my lifetime as a member of the pedophile class. So I think it's a disaster if he gets reelected. Good for the Republican Party because he has an R next to his name, but terrible for the Trump administration, terrible for the Make America Great Again agenda. And Austin, I just want to say thank you because I do think this has been possibly the most substantive conversation between a Trump supporter and a Massie supporter. And Tiffany, I want to say thank you because I know that we got a little heated, but I think that we're going to be able to walk away friends, and I hope the audience enjoyed that.
Yeah, thank you. And make sure that you follow Tom at Real Tom Pappert over on X, Tom. And thank you for your gentlemanliness and your graciousness. I do think that this has been probably the best discussion between a Massie and a MAGA supporter on this one, instead of just speaking past one another online. So thank you both for being here. Tiffany, your closing statement in favor of Massie.
So with regard to anybody saying he's a podcaster or an influencer, Thomas Massie is actually I don't want to say ineffective, but so dedicated to making sure that he's not that on Twitter, he made his primary account his official public account that he doesn't get to keep and doesn't get to campaign from. His 2 million followers are on his official account where he's never allowed to tell anyone to vote and he's never allowed to campaign. His actual campaign account's only 150,000 people, and that's been his focus. He doesn't have a TikTok account. He doesn't post over on Instagram or Facebook, and he doesn't do a lot of podcasts, although he has this week because I've kind of pushed them on him, if I'm being very frank, because I want people to know what he has to say. And that's been a huge part of what I've done to bring podcasters to the district, to make people aware and to level the playing field on what was being spent here with influence by giving our influence for free. And by the way, our creators that have come to town, we've generated 1.4 billion views for Massie in the past 6 days. 1.4 billion views over the last 48 hours. Yesterday and the day before, he was the top trending topic on X almost 38 of those 48 hours. That's an almost impossibility because the entire world is tired of people buying elections. And they want people that just say what they're going to do. They don't want you in lockstep. They don't want you a member of a cult. They want you to represent their interests. And people believe that's what Massie is doing. And especially the people 55 and under, they believe that's what Massie is doing, which is why the other side has spent so much. Now, if you guys want to follow me, you can see me at TiffanyCianci.com. I'm at Tiffany Cianci on YouTube and on TikTok. And I am the Vino Mom on X and Instagram. I've had so much fun. Tom, I really want to sit down with you about lawfare, which I'm very, very big on discussing. And I really want to chat with you about private equity, something I also like to talk to Massie about, by the way.
Well, maybe we'll be able to do that in the future.
We would love to do that.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. And I want everyone who's here to say thank you to our guests who took their time and energy to come and join us for this live debate. I'm so grateful for both of you. And I think both of you managed to attack podcasters in your outro. So just be careful next time on your podcast. I can take the hits. Don't worry about it. Tiffany Cianci and Tom Pappert, this is the kind of conversation that doesn't happen on most shows because most shows don't want that. They just want their own side and they want bias confirmation. You guys both came in here and you took a risk, and I want to give you both a congratulations because this is hard to do. Tiffany, you went to Kentucky, you sat with Massie, you made the case, you took the hard questions without flinching. This is what the audience deserves, and that's what you gave them. So thank you. Tom, you said things that probably cost you some friends, and you came away, you defended every word. I respect that more than you know. Find Tiffany at the Vino Mom on X. Find Tom Pappert and all his work at the Tennessee Star, Real Tom Pappert on X. Both of them are worth your time and worth your follow. Thank you both. And don't forget to go vote today. Have a wonderful day, guys. We appreciate you very much. Yep, that's the Wake Up America show, our Massie versus MAGA debate. What did you guys think? Click the like button if you haven't already. And if you want to support this kind of content, drop some Rumble rants before you go. Please, sir, could I have some more? I'm just a worthless podcaster who don't do nothing good. I'm just a podcaster, sir. Kentucky votes today. The debt clock is still ticking in D.C., and you just watched two people who genuinely care about this country argue about it in real time without a script, without a permission slip from anybody. Tiffany Cianci spent Sunday on a farm in Kentucky eating pizza and playing bluegrass. And she came on this show and made the case from the ground. Tom Pappert of the Tennessee Star came on and made the case that principle without strategy is just performance. Both of them were right about something. Both of them were challenged. And that's how this show works. I wouldn't have it any other way. So if you've been financially supporting the Wake Up America show, just think, you helped make this happen. Thank you. This debate brought to you by you and you. Here's where I land after all of this. The debt is real. The surveillance state is real. The endless wars are real. The fact that one Republican in that building stood alone at 3 a.m. and voted no is real. And the fact that the Epstein crusade went places that it never should have gone, that an innocent auto mechanic and an innocent IT technician had their names dragged through the mud on TV and never got an apology, that's also real. Now, this movement isn't going to get stronger by ignoring the hard parts. It's going to be stronger by being honest about the hard parts. The Liberty Movement builds something real with Ron Paul and Rand Paul and Tom Massie and Justin Amash. And the question that Kentucky answers today is whether there's still enough of that left standing to build something again. We need live heroes in the Liberty Movement. I said that at the top of the show, and I mean it now. No more martyrs. No more funerals. The revolution doesn't need a casket today. It needs a candidate who can win and govern and hold the line when everybody else folds. Now, whether that's Massie or whoever comes after him, that standard doesn't change. Thank you to Tiffany Cianci for being here. Go find her at the Vino Mom on X. Thank you to Tom Pappert, the Tennessee Star. Always fantastic. Find him at Real Tom Pappert. I'm grateful for both of them. If you want to support this show and what we are building here, become a Peterson's Patriot at wakeupamericashow.com. For $17.76 a month, you get 20% off at the Grift Shop, exclusive events, bonus content that doesn't exist anywhere else. Go to forlibertyshop.com, pick up the 250th anniversary collection, and wear something that means something this year. Join the community at forlibertynetwork.com over on Discord. And if you haven't checked out our sponsor, Expat Money, they've got a free money guide for you available at expatmoney.com/Austin. If you want to grab your free report about ways to diversify your investments beyond where the Federal Reserve can touch them, you've got to check out our friends over at expatmoney.com/Austin. Download the free report. It doesn't cost a dime. The information is free, so head to expatmoney.com/Austin. We'll be back tomorrow. The debt will still be rising. Wake up, America. Rise in freedom.
In the rough farming country of New Jersey, around 1754, a girl named Mary Ludwig was born who would one day stand shoulder to shoulder with cannon fire and earn a permanent place in the legend of the American Revolution. She would become known to history as Molly Pitcher. She grew up tough, working hard on her father's farm. In 1775, she married a young barber named William Hayes. When the war broke out, William enlisted in the Continental Army as an artilleryman. Most wives stayed home. Molly refused. She became a camp follower, one of the thousands of brave women who marched with the army, cooking, washing, nursing the wounded, and enduring the same hardships as the soldiers. By the summer of 1778, Molly was with her husband's unit in the sweltering heat of Monmouth, New Jersey. June 28, 1778, dawned brutally hot, one of the hottest days anyone could remember. The temperature climbed past 100 degrees. Men were dropping from heat stroke before the first shot was even fired. The Battle of Monmouth exploded into chaos. British and American forces slammed into each other across open fields. Cannon roared. Musket fire crackled like lightning. In the middle of it all, Molly Hayes moved like a woman possessed. She carried heavy buckets of water from a nearby spring to the exhausted, parched soldiers. Time after time, she ran through smoke and flying lead. "Here comes Molly with the pitcher." The thirsty men began calling her Molly Pitcher. Then disaster struck her own cannon crew. Her husband, William, collapsed beside his gun, overcome by heat and exhaustion. The crew was short-handed and about to abandon the piece. Molly dropped her water bucket, wiped the sweat and gunpowder from her face, and stepped forward. "Stand back, boys," she said. "This gun needs firing." She grabbed the rammer staff and took her husband's place at the cannon. For the rest of that long, blazing afternoon, Molly Pitcher loaded, rammed, and fired the cannon with deadly accuracy. British cannonballs streamed past her. Musket balls whistled by her head. The ground shook beneath her feet from the recoil. Smoke stung her eyes and burned her lungs. Still she worked, sponging the barrel, loading powder and shot, and pulling the lanyard again and again. Soldiers who watched her could hardly believe their eyes. A woman, covered in sweat and grime, standing tall in the middle of a battlefield, working a cannon like a seasoned gunner. One British cannonball came so close it tore through the bottom of her dress between her legs. Molly looked down and kept loading. When the smoke finally cleared at the end of that brutal day, the Battle of Monmouth ended in a hard-fought American stand. General George Washington himself rode across the field and noticed the remarkable woman still standing by her cannon. Legend says he removed his hat, bowed slightly, and called her Sergeant Molly. After the war, Molly returned to Carlisle, Pennsylvania. She lived a hard but proud life. In 1822, the Pennsylvania legislature recognized her service and granted her a small military pension, one of the very few given to a woman for direct combat service in the Revolution. She died on January 22, 1832, at nearly 80 years old. Molly Pitcher was never a general. She never led armies. She was a farmer's daughter, a soldier's wife, and a woman who refused to stand on the sidelines while freedom was being fought for. On the hottest day of the war, when men were falling from heat and British steel, she picked up a rammer and stepped into hell itself. She carried water until the water ran out. Then she carried the fight. From the muddy roads of the march to the smoke-choked fields of Monmouth, Molly Pitcher showed the world that courage has no gender, and that sometimes the bravest soldier on the battlefield isn't wearing a uniform. She she's carrying a water bucket and then a cannon rammer. Her story still thunders across American history. The day a woman stood tall in the cannon smoke and helped win the fight for liberty. Molly Pitcher, the heroine of Monmouth, and a true daughter of the American Revolution.